What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Split Screen D&D, place where we are attacking all things Dungeons and Dragons from both sides of the screen. Wow, this guy
I haven't done
is
that in a while.
he
You're
is
welcome.
ready.
I'm ready.
This guy's
Internet.
ready.
Ready.
He's ready. I'm Tom Quinn, resident dungeon master here at Modern Myth.
And despite I'm not ready, I'm Josh Whitens, resident player character here at Modern Myth.
Excellent. And continuing our series, which we kicked off with early tier play or low tier play, however you want to call it. We're moving into that mid tier, what some people might think of as the sweet spot. Some people might disagree. We'll come to find out in the comments, I'm sure.
But first, ladies and gentlemen, hey, Internet. Man, you've been good to us. Oh, God, we're loving it too. But some of you out there aren't liking or subscribing, and we know who you are. And so maybe you should hit that like, subscribe, comment, and hit the bell notification. And man, some of you are just getting all up on that Patreon, and we just loving it. So please, is this too much?
Check us out at patreon.com/modmyth. No, I think it's exactly what the people
I'm
at
gonna
home need.
back off right now.
It's
That's a bit much.
Yeah, we're probably going to get a few cease and desists from just general viewership.
I'm sorry if I made you creep out there just a bit there, Internet.
I mean, I'd say, if this didn't do it, there's
you need to watch some other videos.
25 other videos that we got a shot at it. So
all right,
but diving into mid-tier play.
Yeah.
Mid-tier play, I guess I think I volleyed it in a similar way. Where do you land on mid-tier play relative? I know both of us are big fans of early tier play.
Yep, we love it.
Is that to say the further we move from early tier play, the less you
No, I think every tier has value. I probably personally enjoy early tier because you see an exponential growth of power, and I love growth of power. But if you're talking about specific levels, is that what you're asking, or
you are correct in that we should probably define that before we actually say anything about it. But so let's do that. But what I was actually getting at is kind of, where do you land? Are you I love early tier, but if not early tier, I gotta be that level 20 or so.
No, I would consider this. I love early tier if you heard the last video, because you do get the exponential power. But in mid tier, this is when you feel powerful. This is when you've reached.
Yeah.
And were you still
you are now a superhero. And speaking of being a superhero, specifically what levels are you talking about? I think we'll be in the same ballpark here, but I think everybody is going to have their own definition here.
Yeah, I agree. Level 5, I think, is a safe place to say. I say a couple levels after, maybe one level, 6 through 12. That's what I would say.
6 through 12. Okay.
Yeah.
I and again, I think as with low tier, I tend to be a little narrower, than you have, but we're in the same ballpark.
Okay.
I would say probably 5, 6 to 10, somewhere in there. But,
okay.
But so
around there.
So in the same ballpark. I think that. So with that in mind, I mean, you've already stated, and anyone who's played 5th edition, even people who 5th edition isn't their bag,
right?
I don't think anyone's going to argue the point that if not before mid tier, by mid tier you are a superhero. You are doing things that no mere mortal is doing.
Yeah, your list of powers is getting to be where you have to read your list of powers before every session, because you're probably going to forget one or two, which I've totally done, by the way.
Well, and you guys are, I mean, I don't know when this transpired, but you guys are technically pushing into high tier.
We're getting there. Yeah. We're getting
but I'm really glad that that's kind of where we kicked off, because I think it's probably the crux of the obvious benefit of getting higher leveled, higher tiered in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And also potentially one of the greatest drawbacks is the more that gets stacked onto your plate as a player.
Yes.
The more you have to consider on a turn-by-turn basis, on a,
yes.
and I think certainly from the DM side of the screen, when we're talking about the different tiers and kind of the considerations that, and this will hold true the further you get from tier to tier,
Yep.
is things are going to get more complicated at this
Right.
point. Things are going to, and my eye specifically falls to combat because 5th edition is so
So
combat centric.
Yep.
And while I have no issue with being at that level of power, I think one of the failings of the climb from tier to tier is that power isn't expressed. That power seems to be expressed through a surplus of options rather than a manageable number of options that are simply more potent than they used to be.
I like
which
that.
which
Yeah.
is a factor. I mean, certainly you're getting more potent.
Yeah, you're getting more attacks, you're getting more proficiencies,
Right.
Bonus, yeah.
But I think, and I think this is probably symptomatic, maybe a little bit of video game culture,
Okay.
where in a video game, if you pick up, let's take a roguelike, for instance. I think this is actually graphs pretty well. I mean, you can use an RPG. I mean,
Sure.
you take Skyrim, you could take you could pick up a dozen passive abilities. You could pick up 15 new. A computer whose job is just to crunch that stuff
Right.
is doing all of that for you. It literally takes no additional bandwidth to have all of those abilities in a
Right.
video game. A player at a table who has to consider and calculate all, those 6 different passives that are now applying. Those,
Yeah.
and so I think we've been trained that what progress looks like as a hero is getting sweet new abilities. And I'm not arguing against this.
Yeah.
I think it feels great as a player to go like, ooh, I got this sweet new thing that I can do. But it's contending with 20 other sweet things you can do, and you can
Right.
only do one on your turn.
Yeah.
And the question is I see it happen regularly that, okay, you've got 20 things, you use 4.
Right.
It doesn't mean that those other 16 things don't warrant some consideration.
Right.
And I think there could be a distillation of the expression of power in 5th edition.
All right.
So
Yeah.
talk with me a little bit about that, because I know how important these features
Right.
are to you as a character or to you as a player.
I mean, that's why we've been playing it, so we can get I can't wait till I get to my next level to get that new power I want.
Right.
So what I feel like that as you get higher in these levels, it's no longer about what's my new cool power. It's a battle of attrition now.
Okay.
That we have so many powers that we try to find the best power to fit the situation and savor powers that might fit a better situation than later. So it becomes knowing your character.
That I want to echo that
Know your character.
because I really think if there's an antidote to what I was talking about, to
Right.
the kind of pacing slump that higher and higher tier D&D can fall into,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
You nailed it. But keep
Yeah,
running.
yeah, absolutely. So there's you mentioned roguelikes, and I'll counter with an amazing video game that you grew up on Sega. I grew up on Nintendo. And there's a amazing
I'm not even gonna say, because I already know.
Go.
No.
What game am I gonna mention?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I this is a perfect opportunity to issue a challenge in the comments, and I do not care to be on the losing end of that.
Who you're gonna
that-
be. Sorry, Nintendo's gonna win, dude. Sorry.
Yes, Nintendo's gonna win.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. But Super Nintendo, there was an amazing
One
game.
of the greatest consoles.
Oh, I still have
Maybe the.
I still have my Super Nintendo, and I absolutely love to play it when I can. There's a game called oh God, I'm gonna mess it up, and I'm gonna feel so bad. It's Mega Man X. Yes, Mega Man X. I don't know if there's a Super in there. If Super Nintendo just threw Super in front of everything, so it might be Super Mega Man X. I don't know. But
Did you ever play
counter that-
Super Mega Man X64?
fucking Nintendo, dude. And sometimes the names aren't the
what
best.
genius marketing.
I know, right?
So, continue.
But to counter that, because what happened with Mega Man, and this especially in the Mega Man X series, is he was getting the powers after every boss.
Yep.
So he would learn to you as a player would have to learn how to use that boss's ability. But at the same time, which is why I like Mega Man X a lot, you are upgrading your body armor. For example, when you fought the Snow Penguin dude, you would get this the you could dash boots.
Right.
So you're learning a lot. So it's you get it over time. And so as you accumulate these powers over time, you learn, especially if you have a DM who can maybe like show you like, hey, you got this new power. Let me show you a cool way to use that power, which might, I don't know, that might be putting too much on the DMs.
No, well, I certainly think if you're not as a DM, especially now that you're getting into these mid tiers where players have a lot of options, understanding what those options are and thinking about those, because our job is when we create an encounter, it doesn't matter what kind of encounter, but when we create an encounter is to challenge you.
Yeah.
If we don't understand what you can do, how can we possibly challenge you?
I like that, yeah.
But that gets down to the complexification of challenging the players.
So as we
they
gain
can do a
powers,
lot more.
You have to take way more into account, which
Right.
is an interesting thing. So yeah, I love that game because it Mega Man was always great at teaching you things like this is how you jump, this is how you shoot, and this is what happens when you run into this enemy, and now what happens when you
Big
run
fan of the tutorials at the beginning of games, huh?
Oh,
That's just your that's your
plus Eco Raptor. Like I don't know how I might be dating myself. Like it might be 8 or 12 years ago. Did an amazing dissection of how a Mega Man was one of the best tutorials.
Oh, did it? Yeah.
Because it
Right
wasn't
on.
a tutorial; it was gameplay. You learned through gameplay.
Yep.
But
On,
anyway,
I'm just gonna throw this out there real quick.
go.
On the subject of tutorials, do you remember the Far Cry DLC?
Blood Dragon, dude.
Yes,
The best.
one of the greatest
'Cause it just
commentaries on
mocks-
video game
It's
on video
mocks
game
the
tutorials.
shit out of it.
If you guys are whether you're video game players or not, I'm sure you probably have an
Yeah.
idea of what we're talking about.
Far Cry 3.
But check out if you have not seen it before.
Oh,
Check out I'm sure there's gameplay out there
Yeah,
of
it's-
someone walking through the tutorial. Phenomenal writing, just really, really
yeah, it's
solid.
really, really good.
Talk about getting in the weeds. Let's keep
Yeah. All
rolling.
right. So here's my thought. As we get higher and higher tier, I was just thinking about this because some campaigns start at random spots. Like you're a level blank.
Mhm.
What do you like when you start at like level? Let's say 10, which like for me, it's still mid tier. For you, it's almost out of mid tier. Like, is that a good place to start? Because how many powers do you have? And
Right. When you say start, you mean a seasoned group all deciding to start there, or you mean is that a good place to start a new player? Because the answer is no for a new player. I would, and I'll die on that hill. Like I think there's enough, especially in 5th edition. Now,
yes.
there's enough to consider really at level 1 for character creation for a brand new player, new to tabletop RPGs, new to D&D. There's plenty to consider at level 1. I think that any seasoned player would be happy to go like, let's just skip to 3. You know, like
Right, but what about jumping in at 10, 8?
I would say for a seasoned player, I think absolutely. I don't see
Okay.
any reason not to do that.
Right.
And I think that kind of ties into, and I want to touch it kind of at the end of this episode, is
Okay.
the relationship between the tiers of play. Because in our first episode, we were only talking about low tier because that's all we've talked about.
Right.
But as we talk about these subsequent tiers, I want to
Right.
be able to talk about kind of the implication of the previous tiers. Like if you don't play any low tier, that's a different game than playing from level 1 to level 10. Let's say you know it's going to be to level, well, let's use your level 12.
Yeah.
You're going to go to a 1 to 12, something like that. That's a very different game than playing a 5 to 12.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, and there's different considerations for the DM.
Yeah.
Narratively speaking, there's different considerations because I don't have to get you from, you know, fighting rats in a cellar to level 12 where,
quest.
you know, let's say level 12 you're slaying a dragon proper.
Yeah. You're
You know.
saving
Yeah.
like major cities.
Yeah, that's a big narrative gap.
Yeah.
But at level 5, there's no reason like realistically those rats have nothing to do with that dragon,
Yeah.
you know, because you're level 1, but I can't, you know, like I could throw kobolds at you if I know it's going to be, you know, that's
Yep.
But I think by taking each tier in a vacuum and not like, so let's not think about
Yeah.
early tier for a minute. What that means is if you're starting at level 5,
Yeah.
I have no problem. I could introduce that dragon session 1.
Right.
Now, you're outmatched at level 5. We pretty much know that.
But at the end.
But I can, if you're level 1 and I introduce that dragon, literally one breath weapon in the whole, it's a TPK. That's done.
Right. Right.
So it's unrealistic that I could, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like, and obviously there's some narrative ties that follow that same line, but because from level 1 to say level 5, you gain so much power
Yeah.
that you can start speaking a different narrative language as of about level 5.
Yeah.
And it's a language that's meaningful really all the way to high tier,
Yeah.
but it's certainly meaningful all the way through the
Right.
mid tier.
Well, I guess then maybe we should go this. Maybe that's where we should have started. I don't know. What do you like mid tier? And if so, like, what do you like about it?
I like mid tier because, well, the thing I'll say I'm a little. I've got a foot in both camps, kind of.
Okay.
I like when my players are having a fun time at the table. That's what I like about the game.
Oh, I thought you just destroyed our hopes and dreams. I thought that's what a DM did.
I mean, because sometimes in between those moments you have fun, and that's why we all get together on a regular basis of my choosing,
There we go. Oh,
and no one's ever late.
I'm learning
ever.
about your manipulation tactics right here.
No, but it really is a deal where it's I think, let's say level 5
Okay.
is that moment where so many players are going to go like, ha, ha, ha. But, the fighter now is wrecking with that second attack.
Yeah.
You've got casters slinging fireballs. You
Right.
got,
Rogues can uncanny dodge.
yeah. Which I mean, now
That's not bad.
it's not bad, but it's kind of like,
This sneak attack is also getting
it's getting
stuff and stuff. But yeah.
it's but
Sorry,
but
rogues.
The big thing is that seeing that, like, oh man, we just crested level 5, and they're going like, they kind of are realizing the vision of their character that they had since level 1. Like,
yes.
Most people, I think, sit down having an idea of what that's going to look like. And so if that's a cool thing as a DM, to see the players starting to revel in the power that they have,
Right.
and also knowing like, hey, now I can start throwing some really meaningful, challenging engagements in that capacity.
Yeah.
The problem is,
okay,
rules is written, it's going to be a long time before you see that glimmer in their eye again. I will argue it will be the entirety of the mid-tier before they have another moment that re-actualizes the vision of their character.
Okay.
I think that wizard who now has harnessed Fireball, we'll use that because it's such an iconic.
Oh my gosh.
But the same goes for fighter. Okay, you go, fighter. Well, fighter gets a third attack. Well, great, but that's a 25% increase on damage, not a 50% increase the way their second attack was.
Right.
They and players, whether they are acknowledging it on an actual numbers level, they are acknowledging the fact that they are seeing diminishing returns. And I think it's no wonder why, if you look at the numbers, it's in that doldrums of mid-tier that most campaigns fall apart. I think when players begin going, I used to be getting gnarly stuff for the first 5 levels. I was getting stuff.
Right.
And they hit that 5 and they go, now I am me. I'm who I always thought I'd be. I think that's a really cool moment to see players as a DM. And I think, unfortunately, given the default character progression, there's some added work on your plate to go, I need to do something interesting in this space for my players, because the rules are kind of letting the players down in this gap. And that's not to say that there's nothing interesting happening, but nothing so big as the difference between not having Fireball and having Fireball, not having a second attack and having a second attack. And what is it? It's 10th level that fighter is going to grab their third attack, yes?
11th.
Okay, well, even more to my point. So there you go. It's like, if that's the big thing at level 5, where now like your martial prowess really has bloomed, you got 6 more levels before you're going to get that pat on the back, and it's not the same as getting a second attack. Getting a third attack is, and so all I'm saying is there's a lot of, I think, data to suggest that however players say they feel about mid-tier,
Right.
it seems to be manifesting in players and maybe DMs alike losing a bit of interest in that gap.
Well, okay.
That's why I say I got a foot in
All right.
both camps, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I speaking from a player standpoint, and I want to because I think there's stuff that can be done about that. But I really enjoy this tier. I love early tier. It's probably my favorite because Rocky movies. I love the montages. Right. I love seeing the progression of power. Right. But here's where we get to actualize it. And this is when I get to feel power. This is when my hard work of 1 through 5 pays off, and I become the badass that I always knew I could be, and I get to revel in it. And I'm not fighting gnolls anymore. Oh hell no! I'm fighting some pretty. This is what I don't know from a DM standpoint, but from what I can see as a player, this is when the monster manual starts to open up.
Absolutely. I absolutely think if you're big on homebrewing monsters, if you're big on if you're just big on kind of monster lore and really getting the most out of the monster manual, I completely agree.
Right.
From the DM, suddenly you can use all sorts of pages, whereas before it was like, well,
this will probably kill him.
I've got, it's a I want you to keep running with that, but I think this is going to illustrate both of our points actually, interestingly enough. But
so yeah, being able to all right. I understand that, yes, mathematically you are correct. I don't think there's it's you just don't get as much power. The power curve does, but it doesn't stop. And you are able to, especially as subclasses, you're able to get new powers that might, you're no longer doing raw DPS, DPR, whatever term you want to call, but you're able to do different things. And that might expand your characters in ways you didn't think about.
That, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that 100% I think is part of the optics of that move. Is 1 to 5 is pretty heavily channeled in, like, I'm getting a lot of hit points relative to what I had. I'm getting a lot of damage relative to what I had. I'm getting a lot better at what I already do. Like, a lot better.
Right.
For a player, it's a really, really good thing going into the mid-tier to go, mid-tier, I'm not going to get a lot better at what I already do.
Right.
But I'm going to get better at other things that I didn't do before well.
Yeah.
And if you can be cool with that,
right,
that's fantastic. But kind of to your point about the monster manual,
yeah,
is level 1. Let's say you run across some goblins. Okay,
sure.
Actually, I mean, a band of goblins could be
they could fuck you up.
if well run.
Yep.
Could be a serious challenge. But to punctuate my point I'm about to make, let's further mundane it and let's just go with the old rats in the cellar.
Ah, love the rats in the cellar.
A classic.
Love it.
So the old rats in the cellar.
Yeah.
Just give me just a ballpark idea. What's a reasonable encounter at level 5? Paint a picture of a monster that is, or monsters.
You're talking about rats?
No. Any monster at level 5.
One or many? Does it matter?
Any. Yeah.
I would think at this point, at level 5, you're probably coming up into your boss, which means you have one pretty solid character. Let's go gnolls. Gnolls are fun.
Okay.
Right. So you have your priest who's buffing everyone. Right. You might have a couple of medium-sized guys and then a whole bunch of
got some range.
minions.
Oh, some minions. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna throw some range in there too,
range.
because you got to have some bow in there too.
Right.
But okay, so a gnoll warband. Okay.
Right.
So you have gone from recovering the cheese wheel. From
I don't think we could ever truly appreciate how important that cheese wheel is.
That, well, I mean, especially when you guys realize it's the MacGuffin for the entire campaign, and you just gave it to that dumb farmer who asked for it.
There's a gin in that cheese wheel. You didn't know.
That's your solution. I think that's your solution for is any item you find could have a genie in it. That's a very Kel. That's a very that's
as far as my imagination
I actually
goes.
really like that for Kel. It's just every artifact you find.
Rubbing.
Come on, big bucks, no whammies. But so here's the thing. You are literally fighting probably close to a one-on-one. Maybe you're outmatched by a couple rats in terms of numbers.
It depends on your party size.
Let's say you're a 3-man party and you're fighting four 4 rats.
Okay.
Okay. So this is your tutorial encounter.
And because you might have a
Cool.
wizard who can't do shit, and then level 1 wizard. I think we can all agree doesn't do much, and maybe like a 1 frontliner. So you have to be careful. Yeah.
But the optical difference between that and let's say saving a village from a null raiding party.
Right.
Cool. I think as you move through, and again, this is not to imply that like come level 10, you're still being challenged in the same way by those gnolls, but you've literally gone from basically doing a chore on a, like, hey, like literally anyone could do this, but would you be willing to?
Right.
To virtually no one but you in the realm can do this.
Yeah, level 5.
At level 5.
Yeah.
Level 5 to level 10, it's still virtually no one in the realm can do this. And that monster manual opening up does not have the same, when we're talking about here's rats, here's the null raiding party, and not that much above it is here's this. Now I completely agree, when you push into high tier, absolutely you're getting to stuff that isn't even fathomable. Even at mid tier, it's not fathomable.
Right. Oh yeah. Jeez.
But I just think like I said, I agree, and I really like, because my whole pivot on this portion of the conversation was to understand that a lot of the ways your character is developing through the mid tier is blossoming outward in terms of like you're garnering a lot of new skill sets and abilities that may be situational to situations you had no skill to solve before.
Right.
Mold Earth is kind of a good. I know that's kind of a riff.
It's a multi-class. So, but yes,
but it's a good example of quite literally your alternative up to that point was, I think we've got a shovel.
Yeah,
and the time that would take, and and you've been persistent in finding opportunities to use it.
I'll ask, like, hey, what kind of earth are we? Are we talking stone? Are we talking dirt?
And I guarantee that when
you never let me use it, by the way.
Well, since you've been in the canyon, and you've used it on a number of occasions.
Fair enough.
but here's the thing: is on the interesting thing is I'm confident that when you went, I know exactly who Kel's going to be. You weren't getting hyped in your mind about that time when you picked up Mold Earth.
Not at level 1.
Yeah.
Absolutely not at session 0. Absolutely not.
And so the cool thing is that's a broadening of the character rather than a sharpening of the skill set. And I
like
think
that.
Mid-tier really does more of that. And you have to really, as a player, get your head around the fact that 1 to 5, you are getting very sharp. You are getting deadly at what it is you do well. But you have to understand that changes at 5.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of players that don't understand that, it can get a little demoralizing.
That's a fucking brilliant point. That's awesome.
Well, it was your point. I'm just picking up.
No. Well, you say it better than me, because you're DM and I'm just a lowly PC. But
so all you PCs out there, don't take the self-loathing too
I'm
harshly.
hoping for like some pity, something.
This is the internet. There's no such thing as pity.
It's true.
There's pile on and death.
That's all you get here. But I thinking more about it. I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes, and if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. But the idea of every level you get an ability, make that ability meaningful. Even if you can't think of it in like, God, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Paladin has lots of like things that I don't like. Why would I ever? My aura of fear. I think I've mentioned this. Really, how many times have I ever run into a monster that has the fear effect? Have I run into one yet?
Yes.
Oh, that's true.
Just recently, the 2 snakemen attempted to fear you and allies adjacent to you, and it was for naught.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That was going to actually be. I mean, I knew you had it going in, but I was like, well, this is part of what they do, and they don't know that you've got it, so they're going to try it.
Yeah.
And it was like, what a different encounter that might have been.
Wrecked face. But But I was like,
But
okay,
I get it. It's a pretty niche thing.
niche. Like you don't run into it super often. So I was like, okay, this is what I got. This is what I'm gonna run with for how many sessions? What can I do with it?
Yeah, kudos on turning it into a narrative
I
element.
appreciate that. I think I've mentioned it before, and I don't want to harp on it too much. But yeah, I was like, how could I turn that? So it turned not into a mechanical, turned into an RP.
Right. And I think, certainly, especially when it's something passive like that, obviously you take advantage of the mechanical benefits. But the other thing is, and I think it's worthy of harping on, no doubt, is for anyone out there, and this is DM and player alike, like, I mean, it's certainly in the player camp, but there's, I think, things we can do as DMs to, outside of game, talk with our players to help facilitate this. But, the abilities you're gaining, and I think this is really pertinent to mid-tier. So I really like that this is someplace that we've landed. The abilities that you're gaining that aren't just flat, DPS, DPR increases, that aren't just flat, I'm more of a badass when I draw my blades, those are still representations of the growth of your character.
Yes.
And the wording on this is going to sound a little harsh. It's not intended to, but that's just the way it's going to be.
Dick.
It's legitimately a failing if you just brush that under the rug. That's an opportunity, and you can either grab the reins and go, I'm not really that excited about this. Imagine how much more excited you might be if you're RPing your way through this new, like again, I completely agree, and it's something I think you really, through these conversations, imparted in my mind when you came to me and you went, so I've got this aura of fearlessness,
right? And
I'm really wanting to lean into it from an RP standpoint. It's like, and immediately I went like, what would that experience be like to suddenly wake up one morning and you aren't afraid of anything? You cannot be made to fear. And it's like, if that's not RP fuel, stand up from the table and go home. Like that is, I mean, like there's so much you can do with that. And so, and I think that more often than not, abilities that you're going to find, especially in this mid-tier, ones that, again, you're going to go like, oh, sweet, I got XYZ.
Right.
It's like, well, what does that feel like? What does that look like? How'd you come to get it? Yeah. Don't just let it be words on a page.
Absolutely.
You let it play out in game. And there's some, I think that's a really good way to, my feeling about mid-tier is that mid-tier is the ability doldrums of D&D. And not because it's bad stuff, but it's because players have been given an expectation of growth by levels 1 through 5.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And it's only natural to go like, like, I just got fireball.
Right.
Oh, I just got my second. And it's understandable. But to just go, and go like, well, 4 more levels from now, I'll get something I am excited about.
Right.
Well, that's because you're only thinking about them in terms of how am I going to use this in the game?
Right.
And not thinking about them in terms of how does this new ability allow me, what does Kel look like as fearless Kel versus previous Kel that we've known?
Yeah.
What does, I mean, like I said, we don't, I guess I don't know if do we have another example right offhand of something? Do you have something else about your character or about? I mean, it really doesn't. It doesn't
anything that
matter. Just any like, let's call it a pseudo mundane ability gain.
Well, I don't know if pseudo, but my mind went immediately to Warlock because you continue to upgrade your Eldritch, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Like what new incantation? Like
that's also a pretty crux part of the class is
right. But you're getting new abilities. It's like you just wake up one morning and all of a sudden you could do like more incantation. Like, no, what did you have to do to get them?
And certainly, I would say in hindsight, we did our top 10 classes, and it doesn't actually make one of my classes personally,
right?
But I really have some serious regrets about not framing that more through the DM side, because there is so much from it. Warlock might be my favorite class to DM for,
right?
Because natively you have a dark patron and the cool stuff that you can do on the DMing side with that. Right. But what an opportunity as you're leveling through what I'm going to refer to as the doldrums
Yeah.
to, well, how is the relationship with your dark
Ooh,
patron
so
changed?
Cool. That's so cool.
You know, is it manifesting physically? Can the other players
Right.
see, like, you know, that I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Are you becoming more physically akin to your patron?
Right.
Are you becoming, you know, and there's so much you can do with it. And I think this is the tier where you have to embrace that or risk losing a lot of the interest that early tier
Right.
hooked into you.
Well, and going off just basic things, let's say you're going up in spell levels, right? So you, as a character, have to become aware of the fact that you're becoming more powerful.
Yes.
You have to become aware of that fact. What does that mean for your character?
Right.
Are you starting to begin the god complex journey? Are you saying like I can take on anything? Are you afraid of the new power that you're gaining?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of cool things that you can explore.
Yeah. And I think that's something, an interesting exercise might be to sit down, and whether you physically write it or not, but at least provide the consideration
Right.
for yourself every time you level of going, not what has Wizards of the Coast granted me in this level?
Uh-huh.
What does this level mean to my character? Like,
Yes.
you know, how do I feel about this?
Yeah.
You know, and again, especially when you're talking about, I mean, we leaned into Warlock because I think it's one of the darker,
Yep.
you know, that innately the growth of power is a tightening of the bond
Yep.
between you and your patron. Obviously, the same could be said for a cleric or a paladin.
Yeah.
That you know, albeit it's not a dark patron, but you have a
Depends.
god or a god. Well, it could be a god or a goddess.
Yeah.
You know, what does that mean with
Yeah.
regard to that relationship,
Yeah.
and subsequently the relationship between your character and the
Right.
rest of the characters and players at the table?
I want to make one last little comment about that, but I want to switch because I don't know if we've talked, and I don't want to go too. Oh goodness, I don't want to go too late. But we've talked a lot about the player side. I want to see like DM side as well to see if is there any solutions to get past this doldrum stage. But before we get to that, players, if you notice, if you're like me, you build out your characters. If you're starting to get unexcited about where your character's going, don't be afraid. I think multi-class is where this could get really exciting.
Well, I think no doubt in terms of introducing aspects of your character that once again you had some control over, saying this is the way I want to see, you know, again,
Right.
you've got a second dog in the race almost, of whereas we talked about like the wizard going like, someday I'm going to be slinging fireballs, I'm going to be blowing things up,
Right.
you know, that the second you dip into that multi-class, now
Right.
you have an opportunity to go like, someday soon I'm also going to be XYZ. And
Right.
now you've kind of, my only concern is, did you mitigate, or have you only postponed that feeling of, because at some point you're going to realize your aspirations in that class, and then you're going to be.
It depends on what your goals is. Dips,
But I get what you're saying.
Dips
I
are fun. I like dips.
Yeah.
Like just a 1 or 2 levels of something. Be careful if you're a spellcasting class because that will hold you up a lot. But like,
Unless it's fighter, you got to go 5.
gotta
Go action surge, second attack. Come on, you got to go 5 for
Depends
fighter.
on what you're doing. Because it just depends.
Well,
but
That's true. But fighter is tight to multi-class.
fighter is tight. Oh god, there's so many cool things you can do. But I was just saying, okay. But yes, fighter.
Sorry, I'm not trying to derail you.
It's fine. But yeah, if you're starting to realize, like Paladin, for example, the power curve is really substantial at the beginning, but it does drop off as you raise up in levels. And so if you start to see that happening, maybe multi-class is something else to keep your interest going, or explore other avenues. Like, man, you can do some weird shit. So yeah. But DM side of things, we play about like, how do you combat this? Do you feel the Doldrums as much as we do?
No, I mean, I think a DM who cares about his table or her table, I mean, they've got the finger on the pulse of their players outside of game. Like in game, it should be pretty apparent. Like if players are excited about being there, you maybe don't need to do anything. It's like, oh, well, it's level 9 and everyone's hyped. Like, well,
Right.
cool. They don't seem to be feeling too much. But I think you should at least be cognizant of the fact. I mean, like, again, however your table's performing through the mid-tier,
Right.
again, you read your own deal, but the data absolutely suggests that it's around that time. I want to say it's between level 7 and level 9 is where most campaigns end.
Weird.
Yeah.
I think that's
Not end as in like the story has come to an end.
like people are like
fizzle
we're
out.
fucking done. All right.
Yeah. But so here's the thing is I think as a DM, one, if you're into homebrew, if you're into like whether it be cool companions, cool items,
Monsters,
cool
man.
level features. I mean, you can
that's
homebrew
too-
in your own,
yeah.
homebrewing in your own feats. Something that a notion that I really like is, let's call it action-based or interaction-based feats. Like if I saw an interaction taking place that was very clearly like an investment of a player's time and energy.
Yeah.
Going like, well, on their next level up, going like, well, hey, well, the example that comes to mind now it hasn't been on a level up basis, but, and we talked about this a little bit in the rewards section, in the progression section is, I would say if the party invests themselves in any endeavor, I mean, again, for our case, it was the Tempest, that offering other ways in which the characters can hone their skills that are not level up dependent.
I like that.
They can be level dependent. Like I could have just as well said like, hey, at your next level, you guys will also gain the feat, the airship crewman feat.
Sure.
I could have done that, but I mean, just from a narrative standpoint, makes a lot more sense that you don't have to wait to level up.
Right.
Once you completed the necessary tasks on the Tempest, you were a competent crew. But I think there are a lot of opportunities through those mid-tiers, especially because this is also a place where players can really begin to look in different directions. A level 7 wizard is thinking about very different things than a level 7 ranger, a level 7 paladin, their minds are beginning to go different places. The types of people they want to interact with for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think those interactions, if you come into a town and immediately the wizard goes off and begins, working heavily with an alchemist.
Yeah.
Might be a cool opportunity that on their next level up or at some point during that process that they gain some alchemy related perk. And it's a cool way to kind of throw a little spice, a little bit extra in that space.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's a case by case basis. Like I said, I think, don't fix what isn't broke. If your players are loving mid-tier just as is,
right.
But I think certainly to just throw your hands up in the air and be like, well, wizards fucked me on mid-tier. What am I going to do?
No,
that's a failing as a DM. You no doubt you're already tweaking so many other things.
Right.
Don't throw the towel in now, make mid-tier as exciting as early tier was.
Well, what I like is you when you in your game when we're running right now, check out the Rovers, is
Blood.
You're introducing, you hinted at this, new gameplay mechanics, and where we're no longer just fighting. Where's the monster at? Okay, now we got to research the monster. All right, we know where the monster is. We go fight the monster. We kill the monster. Yay, reward. It's like, the ship is a cool thing. What we just did was we had to switch bodies, which was unbelievably cool.
Yeah. That was, and I guess that's a good example. Like I said, I would technically call us in the late tier, but certainly I think stuff like that.
Yeah.
If ever, here's another thing I'll throw out on the DM side. If ever there's an opportunity to wedge a one shot into your campaign, something totally off the cuff.
Right.
It's like, I'm talking so off the cuff that, okay, the party goes to, that old playhouse in the middle of town. They're putting on a retelling of the conquest of the Wild West of Faerun, whatever it's going to be. I guess it would be the Wild East of Faerun, but
yeah.
Have them sit down in their chairs.
Yeah.
And then go, you're each a character in the play.
Ooh.
and we're running this one shot, and it's a Western, and now we're in a totally different space.
Yeah.
Find those opportunities because, again, I really do think that this is the stretch where, and it's not me. I guess it's not me thinking it. It's literally, accounts ceasing to be active on D&D Beyond. It's
But the numbers don't lie, right? Yeah.
So like I said, if your table is crushing it, everyone's having a good time, ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But be cognizant of the fact that the numbers seem to suggest that there's something about the mid-tier that players struggle with, DMs potentially struggle with, and you have opportunities. Like I said, I think one shot, such an awesome opportunity to really mix things up. Other strange mechanics.
Right.
This will be, I guess this is a bit of a spoiler, but coming up, there might be some Freaky Friday action going on Rakish Rovers.
Ooh, that's right. We're not quite filming and
we're a little, we got a little backlog, but it's coming soon enough.
Yeah.
Hopefully wets some people's palates. But so, the last thing I think you want to do is just pretend your hands are tied as a DM.
Yeah.
And if you have a group of players that are really motivated by items,
right?
Well, maybe mid-tier is all about that, getting that sweet gear so that they have turn it into a quest. Maybe there's 5 pieces of gear that are going to assemble kind of
that bonus.
The ultimate weapon.
Right.
That weapon may even become a late game MacGuffin. That weapon may be, whatever it's going to be. But you've diverted focus from like early tier.
Right.
The focus for the players really is, I'm leveling more rapidly.
Yeah.
If you're talking about XP, milestone, that may or may not be the case, but certainly from an XP standpoint, you're leveling more frequently early on than you are later on.
Yep.
You're leveling more rapidly. Those levels are worth more to your character in terms of mechanical growth.
Yep.
So you're fighting a losing battle to go like, okay, how can I make them think these level ups are as cool? Don't play that game.
Yep.
Make the mid tier about something else. Is there a really meaningful plot that your players are so invested in narratively? Is it about the items? Is it about those added perks? Is it about finding a new occupation and having a different level of progression that they can have?
Right.
Maybe they start bounty hunting and now their reputation is a big deal.
Right, we talked about that.
And like. But what a great time to start introducing that when you know that you're going into a stage of the game where the levels aren't going to be as hard-hitting and as forthcoming as they have been for the last 5.
Yeah, and if you lose your players now, you're never going to see high tier. Like this is like if this is like the Duldrums.
And it really is, and I think that's, how many people have played a level 20 character? There's a lot of people who have had long D&D careers who haven't played like end game high tier. And I think that's the victimization. The last thing I'll say on the DM side is that because a lot of this has sounded like, players lose interest, the game falls apart.
Oh, that's
100%. I know many DMs. I'm surprised at how little I've kind of fallen victim to this, because I think I'm the personality to fall victim is to go like, okay, we're level 10, whatever. Man, I've got this cool world I've been thinking about. Really cool campaign setting. Like I've really been thinking, I've been chatting with some other DMs. It'd be cool to kind of like start a new campaign and kind of like, and that's the DM equivalent of,
new character.
Of going like, I'm beginning to be more interested in this other world I'm thinking about than the one we're currently running. So I don't want to lay it entirely at the feet of the players by any means, because I think it's probably around this time. If your players are going, cool, I just leveled, let's go do some more of what we've been doing, and you can kind of sense at the table like, I think that might be where that whisper comes through of like, remember how excited they were early tier? Remember how stoked they were when they were leveling up? Remember
nothing that equates to that first time.
Nothing equates to that level 1 to 5 rush that you get. Woo! I'm actualized. So it's like I said, I think there's a number of variables that would incline everyone at the table to grass is greener
Yes.
their game, and I think it's incumbent upon everyone at the table. Like I said, and the thing is I don't know. I think a lot of DMs might be aware of this. I don't
Okay.
know how many players are actively thinking about this space potentially being a lull.
That just depends, I guess, on how. Like, it's a pretty well known thing, even
Yeah.
amongst players. But it depends if you're like looking at this shit on Reddit and whatnot.
Right. But so I would just say if everyone at the table understands, like, we're moving into this space, everyone can take some responsibility in ensuring that they're still getting the enjoyment out of this tier that they got out of the early tier, and kind of gear up for that final push.
It's a different tier. That's
Yeah.
what it is. It's different than 1 through 5. It's just a different thing. Yep, absolutely.
Do you have any parting words? Because I think we're basically there.
Parting words.
Yeah. I don't even think I need to sum up. I mean, I really liked. I honestly, I was kind of like. I mean, you've heard, like, I don't want to sound too morose about mid-tier. I really think
we actually did. Yeah, it's pretty excited. Like there's some really fun things.
I think there's opportunities there, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. Is like I know, I hope anyone listening to this, isn't feeling like, oh man, well, mid-tier's trash, mid-tier sucks. Like,
which is the common
it's
trope. Yeah.
it's not that. It's just that it might take a little bit more work than what Wizards has handed you.
Yes.
To keep that spark alive.
Right.
Mid-tier is it's the proving grounds that you're worthy of those level 20 characters that are coming down the pipeline. But if we don't need any recap, then it's a real quick sign off here.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
Oh yeah, let's give it. What are we doing?
In the last episode, I asked you
Yeah.
for a level 1, the world is yours. But no longer are you level 1.
What level am I?
You have achieved some pretty astounding things. When you look back across, to use a reference from last episode, the breadcrumbs that lead back to your humble origins,
Yeah. Okay.
you find yourself on the precipice of level 10.
Ooh. Okay. I'm pretty good. I'm big boy.
You and your companions have saved villages, befriended higher-ups in nobility,
Yeah.
are owed favors by prestigious organizations, thief guilds, councils of wizards.
Absolutely.
You're getting to the place where, I mean, let's face it, you're some bad motherfuckers.
Bad mofos.
So if you would be so kind as to give me a level 10, the world is yours.
All right. Am I rallying people around me? What's the scenario? Am I going?
You are a level 10 character. Whatever you think that difference might sound like from level 1, I'm ready to hear it.
We fought some fights, and yet we stand victorious. The bodies of the defeated lay before our feet, piled high, and we have not fallen. For we are the champions of this realm. Because they do not know this yet, but we know that the world is yours.